But the series is tied up at 1 game apiece. Why? Because after making 33% of their three-pointers in game 1, Heat shot 49% from deep in game 2. Twice as many contested threes than they hit in the first game. And Jamal Murray, well, he had 10 assists in both games, but he went from 26 points in game 1 to just 18 in game 2 as he attempted 7 fewer shots and had 35 fewer touches. And after dishing out 14 dimes, had a triple-double in game 1, Nikola Jokic had just 4 helpers in game 2. He dropped 41 points. Hey, Eric Spoelstra, is there something to that strategy, though?
This guy's an incredible player. You know, twice in 2 seasons, he's been the best player on this planet. You can't just say, oh, make him a scorer. That's not how they play. They have so many different actions that just get you compromised. He has our full respect.
Oh, it seems like there's something to that. Just let Jokic score. You can win the game. But Spoelstra says no. What are you buying? Are you buying that, Wendy, or what?
Yeah, this is absolutely the Heat's game plan, no matter what Eric Spoelstra wants to admit on the podium. If you go back and look at game 1 in the fourth quarter, they kind of played the same way. They went to zone, stuck to the other players. They went through it throughout game 2, where they were really trying to deny the back cuts, deny Jokic those interior passes where he just takes your defense apart. But I'm going to say, the Nuggets still shot 52%. They still had a higher offensive efficiency in game 2 than they did in game 1. It wasn't like they shut this offense down. What they did was make more three-pointers. And their defensive strategy on Jokic will look good as long as they're shooting 48% from 3 like they did in game 2.
Listen, he's like Magic because he is at his best when he makes his teammates better.
Ooh, like Magic.
What do you think of what you heard from Spoelstra?
I mean, there's no secret that facilitator Jokic, that version of him, the nickname that I gave him, Optimus Dime, when he's passing the basketball at a high level, is the centerpiece of what the Nuggets like to do, right? That's no secret. I think, though, to me, what I do buy from Spoelstra is the level of respect that this guy demands in terms of what he can do. If you want to say let or make him do something, I don't think they would make him a 40-point scorer either necessarily, right? Like if they had that much power to influence the way that he plays the game of basketball. So he is at his best when he is able to be the facilitator. I'm not sure that it's going to demand triple doubles per se throughout the course of this postseason run. But again, and I maintain this after game 2, there was so much more room for the Nuggets to be better. Not just Jokic in terms of being able to pass, but his supporting cast around him. But you got to give the Heat defense a ton of credit. So I will buy the sentiment of the respect that Jokic demands for sure.
You know, I looked this up, and just like Magic, all his Magic's top 3 scoring games in the postseason, all losses. All in the 40s, all of them losses. All right, Wendy, let's talk about the Heat because they could be getting some help on the way. Tyler Herro, this guy was a former 6th man of the year. He was their leading scorer until he basically went down. What's the status for him on game 3?
Yeah, he's pretty much ready to come back. He's been doing contact practice for over a week now. And, you know, in a normal circumstance, I think he'd be celebrated by coming back. But because the Heat won game 2 and they're not facing a desperation 0-2 hole, they have options here. They don't have to rush Herro back. One thing that they seem to be doing, though, Brian, they seem to be hinting that they could bring him back. Eric Spoelstra, who refused to talk about Herro's progress for weeks, was, you know, effusive about how good he looked without being committal. I think what the Heat would like is for the Nuggets to prepare for Herro no matter what, and then they can leave Herro sort of in their pocket for when to deploy him. But he is now going to be an option, but an option for a team that is playing brilliantly, especially shooting the basketball. He's now a luxury good for them.
They've been playing so connected. Would you bring him back?
I would bring him back. I like the phrase luxury good, though. That was terrific, Wendy. I would make him available. I would bring him back. I would not put him back in the starting lineup. I just think this is a different squad from when he left. And not that he would be a detriment, but there is something to be said for chemistry and the rotations that have developed in his absence. So I think that if they get into a spot where they need some microwave shooting or they need an extra body, because it is the playoffs and ultimately you just do need guys to be available, I think him being available is smart. see how he feels in reduced minutes, and maybe they expand, I would not put him back in the starting lineup right now.
Listen, tomorrow obviously going to be a big day in the NBA, but today, huge in the Nuggets need Jokic to notch triple doubles to win the finals. Is that McNuts?
Let me be clear. McNuts is something that's crazy. I think this is not McNuts. It is not crazy, but I also don't necessarily believe that it's vital. If he's flirting with triple doubles, if that rebound number or that assist number is somewhere around 8 or 9, I still think that bodes well for this Nugget squad. And you're going to have to give the Heat the credit defensively that they deserve. This team is going to have to find a way to work around what they've done to the Nuggets like we saw in Game 2.
Since you just mentioned the Heat, how about the Heat three-point shooting will determine who wins the NBA Finals? Is that McNuts?
It is not McNuts. I understand why folks are pointing to this as a key stat. I don't think it's going to be the most important stat. They've shot 41% in wins, 36% in losses. The Nuggets allow teams to shoot right at that 36-35% number, so I'm not sure that this is going to be the single swing pen. I think this series is going to be more about defense.
Folks better stop disrespecting Miami Heat. The Miami Heat will win the NBA Finals. Is that McNuts?
Honey, that is not McNuts. And I thought Vegas had this thing all wrong from the jump for all those folks that jumped down heavy on the Nuggets. This series is going to be a lot tighter than I think most folks thought. I think when you look at the culture, as we've talked about endlessly, I also think you look at the way that the Heat perform in fourth quarters of tight ball games. I think this series is going to be tight. I'm still leaning Nuggets, I'll admit, but it is not out of the realm of possibility very seriously for the Heat to pull this thing off.
Just saw Jimmy Butler in that highlight. He is thriving as a distributor in the finals, but he's averaging just 17 points after scoring 28.5 per game during the first 3 rounds. So Hemi Buckets has yet to lead the Heat in scoring in any of the 8 quarters so far in this series. So let's bring back Brian Windhorst. Wendy, should we be concerned about Butler's slow start to the NBA Finals?
You know, Brian, I don't think he's quite been the same offensive player since he sprained his ankle in that second round series against the Knicks. The explosion that he had against the Bucks coming out of the gate with that stunning upset hasn't been there, but he has still been a very effective player. I mean, one of the big things that happened in Game 2 of this series was Jimmy Butler was on Jamal Murray almost exclusively, and Jamal Murray was certainly taken out of his typical game by Jimmy Butler. And he also came in the fourth quarter and made several big-time baskets when they needed it. I think he was there when they needed him. It is actually a compliment to the Heat that they have been able to be highly competitive without Butler having to need these 35 and 40-point games. Gabe Vincent has been scoring. Duncan Robinson's production is up. I actually think it's a good sign that the Heat are so effective without needing Jimmy to be so dynamic offensively.
Emmanuel, what's your take on that?
I agree with Wendy. And I also think you got to bear in mind that average thing. 56 points in Game 4 versus the Milwaukee Bucks will sway an average to a major uptick. I think that when you look at what Jimmy Butler has been able to do in the fourth quarters, he's one of the better fourth quarters scorers in this postseason of guys that made it to the conference semifinals. And so he shows up in the clutch when it's needed. I think back to a regular season game when I was a reporter on a Miami game. I think it was versus the Bucks around Christmas time. And Coach Spo talked about the way Jimmy infuses confidence into his guys. Like, he was sort of joking, but he was like, he's got Omar Yurtseven thinking that he's Shaq. Yeah. I mean, so part of talking confidence to your guys is also demonstrating that confidence and trusting them and allowing them to make plays. And he has done that. I think Jimmy's a guy that doesn't force it. And so I'm not concerned about these numbers either. I think a playoff Jimmy type performance is in there if it's necessary.
Just like when guys asked him about the role players on the Heat, he said, we don't have role players. We have teammates. That just goes to show you. You talked about Jimmy Butler in the fourth quarter. Take a look at this. The Heat have a minus 24-point differential in quarters 1 through 3 this postseason. They offset that by being a plus 90 in the fourth quarter, which includes outscoring the Nuggets by 21 in the final frame of these NBA Finals. So, Monica, when you look at the tape, what are they doing differently in the fourth quarter for success? I'm talking about the Miami Heat.
Well, I think if you look at Game 2, they had completely figured out what they wanted to do defensively, right? Like, you'd seen them sort of junk it up. You saw some three-quarter court pressure, a little bit of full court pressure. You obviously saw that zone that held someone paid attention to Jokic in the middle. But overall, I think this is a squad that loves to compete. And you hear Coach Spoelstra say that a ton of times, but I think it's something you shouldn't take for granted across sports. It's plenty of folks that love to win. It's plenty of folks that hate to lose. But how do you respond when things are tight, right? And so this is a group, to me, that relishes the opportunity to compete. Again, going back to regular season experience with these guys, like I remember Gabe Vincent having a breakout game on ABC and talking to him post-game. When you look at their stories, I think it's oversimplistic to just say undrafted, they've had to go through a ton of adversity. Like, these are bona fide NBA pros, and so there is a level of comfort and discomfort that I think shines through in the fourth quarter.
Wendy, do you expect Game 3 to be more like Game 1 or Game 2?
I think both the games have been similar, other than the fact that the Heat made 3-pointers. I know that I don't like boiling it down to this. You're asking what has been different in the fourth quarters. In the fourth quarters of Game 1 and 2, they're 11 of 21 on threes. And they have played zone against Jokic in the fourth quarter a little bit, whereas they were resisting that the first 3 quarters. If the Heat make their threes, they're a championship team. If they don't make their threes, they fall back to sort of the 7-8 seed that they were in the regular season. I wish I had better analysis, but the more I look at it, the more it kind of boils down to that. And I don't see why that's going to change. Their strategy is going to remain.
All right, since we're talking a little bit about the Nuggets, yesterday on First Take, our JJ Redick believes that the Nuggets are set up for really to be on top of the West for a long time. Take a listen. Regardless